You have less sleep, you are strained more financially when you have kids, you have more responsibilities, you can't just be as spontaneous as you could be before. And even when you are spontaneous, there's so many little details you have to think of in the moment that when you're just two adults, you don't have to consider. And so I realized that there's this breakdown in so many relationships.
Giving birth is one of the most significant events of your life. Sadly, the joy that you should feel can often be replaced with anxiety and helplessness instead. As a labor and delivery nurse, I'm revealing insider information to educate you, reassure you, and decrease your fear. In this podcast, you'll hear empowering birth stories and experts weigh in on a range of topics. Being Jewish also has me exploring Judaism's influence on the reproductive experience. However, I speak to anyone wishing to navigate their journey with more joy and confidence. I'm your host, Chani Fingerer, and you're listening to the Happy Birthway Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Birthway Podcast. I wanted to thank all of those of you who have messaged me, who have rated the podcast, and who have reviewed the podcast. It means so much to me. You don't have to leave a long review. Just say one word, great, and it will still bump up the podcast and have the podcast apps, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It'll have them bump up the podcast and suggest it and show it to more people. So again, it really means a lot to me, and I wanted to read some of the reviews because I read every single one, and you have no idea how much this means to me. I pour my heart and soul into each episode. So let's read a review from A. Feldman. Really enjoy listening to this super informative podcast and look forward to every new episode that comes out. I have learned so much and am so excited to continue learning. Thank you so much, A. Feldman, and I am so excited to continue to put out great information that I think is so important to know, and unfortunately, not enough people know. All right, B. Schwartz. I think that this is from Cosmopolitan Wigs. So shout out to her for reviewing my podcast. Here's what she wrote. This podcast is something I've always wanted. I am super dedicated to being an educated consumer. And for some reason, when it comes to maternal care and the medical system, we don't always get that. I am so grateful to have Chani's philosophy and insights in my back pocket for the rest of my childbearing journey. That means so much to me. And it is so true that we just don't have enough information that we need in the maternal care system, in the medical system. And that's why, as an insider, this is one of my goals. This is one of the main purposes for doing this podcast, because I want to educate you and tell you more about the system so that you can navigate it to your benefit. Let's read one more by Frady C. I love listening to this podcast. I have been a follower of Yoledet Academy Instagram. By the way, guys, that's my Instagram page in case you haven't heard it enough times on every episode here. I have been a follower of Yoledet Academy Instagram for a while, so the podcast was the next best thing. Although I'm not currently pregnant, I feel empowered and informed listening to this valuable information that I am sure will hopefully come in handy when I am. And yes, read this stuff before you get pregnant. If you have friends that are pregnant, you don't have to be pregnant yourself. But the more you prepare yourself, the better outcomes you are likely to have. So thanks again, guys, for reviewing this podcast. And please, I encourage you, if you enjoy it, to do this for me. It really, 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 really means a lot to me. Before we start the interview, I wanted to let you know about a great new course for preteen girls called Girls Growing Up. Let's be real, many mothers have a hard time talking to their daughters about puberty. Well, Dr. Alyssa Hellman, who's a girl mom and an Orthodox gynecologist, has you covered. She designed this course, which is designed to be understood by preteen girls and watched with or without their mothers. It covers the Torah perspective, anatomy definitions and diagrams with helpful explanations to prepare young girls for the changes of puberty, all in an easy-to-understand, comfortable way. You can sign up at theconfidentkala.com or through Dr. Hellman's Instagram page at theconfidentkala. Okay, so for today's podcast, I am really excited to be interviewing an awesome person. Her name is Sheina Schochet. And Sheina, I've been following her on Instagram for a while, and that's how I found her. Sheina is a licensed mental health counselor, and she is a relationship coach for women struggling with relationships and life transitions, especially new moms dealing with the new dynamics in their relationship after baby. She teaches them to work on solutions and challenge the thoughts and behaviors that keep them stuck, to feel more fulfilled and nurture a happier relationship and life. When she's not busy being a mom or in client sessions, she loves researching evidence-based practices to help moms bring back the love and shift from conflict to connection. And she shares those tips with you over on her account at Love After Baby. And that's spelled exactly the way you would spell love, after, and baby. She is awesome. I can't wait to gain some of her amazing wisdom. And I highly encourage you to go check out her Instagram page as well. This is such a needed niche, and I haven't seen it addressed more. So let's start. Welcome to the show, Sheina. I am so excited to have you on here. It's really a huge honor. You are brilliant, so intelligent, and this is such an addressed topic about how relationships change so drastically after you have a baby. I see this even in my work experience in the hospital, like especially in the postpartum unit, when there's so much going on. A new baby brings so much unknown into someone's life, and like you have so much less control over your life once you have a new baby. You're sleep deprived, you're grouchy, you're irritable, and there's so many more new responsibilities that you're juggling. You have a whole new identity as a mother. And some patients, I see like they're successful. They've never had any major unpredictable bumps in their life, and having a baby is like the first curveball in their life. And I'm so grateful that I found you who is doing this so beautifully and gracefully. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much for that amazing intro, Connie. If the audience could see me now, they'd see a little bit of blushing because you went over the top there. But thanks for having me on. And with my work, I'll give a little bit of an intro. So I got licensed as a therapist, worked through my clinic hours, seeing all kinds of people with working through all different kinds of struggles. And I realized that what I love to work with personally was women going through life transitions, and women typically ranging in, 20s to early 40s, which a lot of people in that category are dating, getting married, having babies. And in the beginning of 40s, there's some women who are approaching that empty nest syndrome because their kids are already heading out to college, for people who started having kids early. And I started noticing with the clients that were coming in with all their different concerns that there was this overlapping struggle that started when babies were born and came to a really high point when the kids were leaving the house. And, to just illustrate with these two specific clients who I have in mind, I had one client who was a new mom, and coming in, she was working full time, and so was her husband, and she worked from home for a bit, and then she had a flexible job where she was able to go into work a couple days a week, and her mother-in-law would babysit when she would go into work. And she started having all these struggles with her husband, dealing with childcare things, dealing with her mother-in-law and how her mother-in-law was giving opinions on what they were doing about their baby and this and that, and all these different struggles that she was having. And then on the flip side, I had a client who was in her early to mid 40s, and her first daughter was going off to college, and she was freaking out about, being in the house alone because for the last close to 20 years, her and her husband's relationship was all about co-parenting their children. They didn't really have their own relationship. They had a beautiful relationship when they first got married and when they first had kids. But then as time went on and all the stressors of life came about, especially the ones that come with kids, which is a beautiful miracle and it's amazing and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But, you have less sleep. You are strained more financially when you have kids. You have more responsibilities. You can't just be as spontaneous as you could be before. And even when you are spontaneous, there's so many little details you have to think of in the moment that when you're just two adults, you don't have to consider. And so I realized that there's this breakdown in so many relationships that's starting when the babies are coming in and then just gets worse until the babies are leaving the house. And if you don't realize and you're not intentional and you're not mindful in noticing it, then your relationship can really get destroyed. And a lot of people get divorced over things like this, or just have a completely apathetic relationship and have nothing to do with one another. And around the same time that I was seeing these clients, I saw a post in a Facebook group from a mom saying that she's just driving around the block and she doesn't know if she wants to even go home to her husband, and there's nothing wrong that he's doing and he's a great guy, but she just doesn't know if she loves him anymore. And different people were commenting in the comments and saying, don't have any advice for you, but I've been there. And people were giving some support, just saying like, I know exactly how you feel. No one saying like, I got through it or whatever. People just sympathizing with her, which is a necessary thing to kind of just be validated and hear like, oh, I've been there too. But I came on and I said, as a wife, mom, and therapist, I can tell you that this is completely normal for your relationship to shift and for you to feel like you don't know where the spark went or what's going on here, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And, as long as there are certain things in place like respect and care and, friendship that you can rebuild, then you can bring back the love again. And that's what brought me to become Love After Baby. And a lot of people resonated with that, and it came to, in the comments, it came out that she was just a few months postpartum. So likely having a lot of hormones going on, adjusting to the new lack of sleep and all of that. So definitely a lot going on, which is going to affect anyone, even a super solid relationship. But a lot of us have different challenges going on in our relationships before kids come about, and we're able to, just kind of breeze by them and they're not such a big concern. Or we might not even know about them before kids come into the picture. And then suddenly kids come in and family differences and cultural differences and different things like that suddenly pop up. And it's like, I feel like I don't know you, which is what I hear from a lot of clients. So that was a very long intro into how I got into the specialization that I work with.
Yeah, it wasn't just an intro. It was so educational and enlightening. And I can definitely see how there are new challenges that crop up about things you never even knew about each other, like discipline styles, parenting styles. I mean, I see that in my own personal relationship with my husband and how, like, surprisingly, we start to argue about a different parenting style, and we have to kind of come to an agreement on how we're going to do this. And my kids completely take advantage of that when they see that we disagree, and they double cross us, So, wow, that is all so insightful. And now I'm going to throw in some dark humor and say, so, when a couple is getting divorced and we tell the kids, no, it's not your fault. I'm getting the gist that kids really do ruin marriages. I'm sorry to say it like that. But, what's your take on that?
So I wouldn't say it's the kids' fault, but this is a whole nother topic that comes up on my page every so often of whether people should stay together for the kids, which is what a lot of couples do. And in doing that, a lot of times, if you're not doing it with the right intention and effort, you're just going to do further damage to your children. I've polled my audience and asked them about that and gotten so many DMs from people saying that their parents did that and they wish that they hadn't because they had a miserable childhood, or that there was always chaos in their house and always fighting and things like that. So you could make an intentional decision to work on your relationship because you have children together and you have that permanent bond. So you want to do whatever you can to make it work before deciding to separate. That is something you can do as long as there is respect there and you're both going to be intentional about working on the relationship and trying to rebuild and bring back the love that was once there. And your kids are going to process what's going on in your relationship differently depending on what their age is. but they really internalize it. And John Gottman says that one of the greatest gifts you can give your children is a healthy relationship between the two of you. A lot of times we put our relationships on the back burner because we're putting our children first, but ultimately you're hurting your children when you do that. You're not serving them because they feel unsafe when their caregivers are not getting along. If you and your partner are yelling at each other in front of the kids feel unsafe. I'm sure that, many people in your audience can relate to at some point if they were having a disagreement or argument with their partner and the kid was old enough to understand and talk, they say, stop yelling at mommy or stop yelling at daddy. I mean, we even had an experience where we were taking a walk on the weekend, I think like a month ago, and my husband and I were having a discussion about something and not at all fighting at all. We just we were passionate about something going on. We were actually in complete agreement about a situation, but we were talking about the situation and talking very passionately. And when you talk passionately, sometimes your voice gets raised and you're saying I can't believe this person did this. I can't believe this happened. And my daughter was listening to this conversation and she didn't really get what we were talking about, but she heard our raised tones and she heard our frustrations, which our frustrations were about this third situation, this third person who did or said something. And she's like, stop fighting or stop screaming. And we told her, we're not fighting. We're just talking about something, but you're right. Maybe we shouldn't raise our voices so much. And just hit home how you really have to be so conscientious about the way that you communicate with one another, because these little ears are always listening and picking things up. And they can misinterpret things. Let's say she hadn't chosen to pipe up. In her mind, she'd be thinking, mommy and daddy were fighting and they were, maybe something's going to happen. And kids don't feel safe. And at a certain point in kids' development, when their parents fight with each other, they think it's their fault. And this comes up from so many children whose parents divorce that had a really negative divorce where there was constant fighting. And a lot of times the fighting is about things like discipline, with how the kids didn't get along, the kids aren't behaving and what you did with this kid and what you did with that kid. And the kids hear that and they internalize it as, it's my fault that my parents are fighting. It's my fault that they are separating. It's my fault that something's going wrong. I even have this vivid memory of, when a cousin of mine got divorced, and I was about 6 years old or 7 years old, and my other cousin was around the same age, a few months older than me. And we were talking about this cousin's divorce, and she had a daughter who was, close in age to us. And we were saying that the parents got divorced because they couldn't agree on how to punish our cousin. I remember this conversation vividly. We came up with this in our heads that the reason why that they're not married anymore is because they were getting into fights about how to punish their daughter. Mm-hmm. I don't even know why we had that idea. One of us may have overheard something from our parents talking. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's a really funny memory that I have. And that's obviously not the reason that they separated. But at the same time, in relationships in general, there's usually not one big thing that makes or breaks the relationship. It's all about the little things, and John Gottman loves to say small things often. So small things can make your relationship, small things can break your relationship. And with children, you have to be even more intentional about doing the small positive things that improve your relationship, because naturally there's going to be more small things that organically come into your life because of children, like having less sleep or having to change diapers and getting annoyed that you're the one who's changing more of them, getting annoyed that you're doing laundry yet again, getting annoyed that you have to scrub the stain out from your kids' clothes because you decided to give them peppers. I mean, I never knew that peppers could stain clothes until my older daughter was around 18 months and she got peppers for snack in school, and she came home and I could not get those pepper stains out. But not that I necessarily got so frustrated by that, but I can see people getting frustrated, scrubbing out stains from clothes, just these little things. I'm trying to think of every little thing that pops up when you have kids, and you have so much more things to think about. You have less free time. So there's naturally going to be so many more stressors and little negative things. And negative is a very broad term, so it could just be slightly bothersome, or it could be very annoying, and it could be downright overwhelming and making you full on like blowing steam out of your ears. There's a range in how frustrating or upsetting things can be, but all these kind of little things are going to pop up once you have kids. Whereas the little positive things are not happening as often. So before you had kids, you likely sat down to eat dinner together pretty often. Before you had kids, you likely sat on the couch to watch a show or a movie together pretty often, if that's something you enjoy doing. Before you had kids, you likely went on walks together often, hung out on the weekend together often. And you're suddenly now not having these moments as organically because you now have children. So you put the kids to bed and you're exhausted, and so you're not in the mood of sitting together on the couch to watch something. Or the kids are with you at the dinner table. It's no longer just one-on-one quality time, which is important to have. It's great to have family time, and that is super important, but it's also really important to have that one-on-one time without your children. So you're either having family dinner, or if your partner comes home after the kids are done dinner and you were, picking at their food as you were cooking and as you served them and as you threw out whatever they didn't eat. And by the time your partner comes home, you're just not in the mood of eating with them because you've picked at things for so many hours. And so you're like, oh, there's this on the stove, or I'll order you takeout, depending on that. So you're not having dinner as often together anymore. And again, this isn't going to apply to every single couple. I'm just giving different scenarios, and different couples will relate to different ones. You're not just going on a random walk around the block anymore because now you maybe need to think about getting a babysitter, or the kids are really not in a good mood and you can't get out of the house. You're not going on date nights as often. You're not, if a new restaurant opens up and you really want to go try it out, there's a lot more thought that has to go into it. There's who's going to watch the kids, what time do we need to go, what time do we have to get the kids in bed to be ready to go on time, and all of that, which beforehand you just made a time and you only had to worry about yourselves to get there. And then speaking about worrying about yourselves, that's another very common trigger and complaint for parents, very often the mom, where they feel like suddenly now, because they're a mom, they have to worry about everything for the kids and themselves, whereas the other partner very often still only worries about themselves. So you feel like, I suddenly have to think about another person, whereas my partner doesn't. With my husband and I, for example, if we go away for a weekend or we go on a trip, I pack up everything for myself and everything for our two kids. He just has to figure out what he's bringing. And sometimes he'll pop in a question of, did you remember to pack the noise machine? Or did you remember to pack enough diapers, or things like that? Some people don't even ask those questions. And it can be really frustrating and annoying and upsetting if you're the one who has to worry about everything and you don't feel like there's other things going on.
Okay, you said some awesome things that give me a lot of food for thought. So firstly, going back, you said that staying just for the sake of the kids is obviously something that's not smart to do, but working on your relationship and trying to salvage your relationship because you already have kids is something that can be viable and can be helpful, maybe even rewarding, right? Yes, exactly. So I'm not saying just because you have kids, don't stay together, but I'm saying don't stay together just because you have kids. If somebody hears it in the wrong way, they might misinterpret what I'm saying. So the kids is a very bonding factor. It's something that connects the two of you permanently for the rest of your child's life, or children's lives if you have multiple children together. So if you can salvage the relationship, then do it. But it's going to take intention and effort. It's not just going to naturally happen just because you have kids together. And if, despite having kids together, there's a complete lack of respect in the relationship, there's no care, it's toxic, it's better for your kids then to grow up in healthy, loving homes and a safe emotional environment than to just have their parents together just because they're their parents, but they're yelling at each other or being cruel to each other at every turn. So that's important. That's good stuff that I didn't really think about, because we always just say, oh, don't stay in a relationship just for the kids. But the kids can be a motivator to work harder on creating a healthy, intimate, connection with your partner, recreating it, so to speak.
Yeah, because there's a range of relationship struggles, right? There's relationships where people feel like they just don't have anything in common anymore and they feel like they're not connecting. There's relationships where people are heatedly fighting all the time. So that's two different issues. If you just feel like you're not connected, work on the connection. If you're heatedly fighting, that doesn't mean that right away you should leave, because passion, it works on both sides, right? There could be loving, fiery passion, and there could be spiteful, fiery passion. So are you able to turn that energy around into loving each other so much that it's, like you can feel it in the air because it's so strong? Or is it not able to reverse for you? And is it just going to still be volatile and, emotionally dangerous, so to speak, for your children?
I love that. I love that. And the part that you said about children feeling like it's about them, it's a well-known fact that children are egocentric and they view the world around them as it relates specifically to them. So I can see how a child might become afraid when the parents are fighting, and children tend to be protective of their parents. So I can definitely see how that can be so damaging to stay in a relationship just for the sake of the kids and continue to fight. And then you were talking about just the little extra things that keep coming into your life, the million extra small things that come into your life when you have a baby. And speaking from personal experience, I get very irritable when I don't have enough sleep, and also when I don't have a predictable routine.
Most people do.
And for me, that's like a major, major factor in how I cope emotionally and relate emotionally to all people in my life. And I can see how all those little stupid things, they're not even anything so significant, but they're just a pile of little stupid things that I will overreact to. And rationally speaking, it's ridiculous that I'm overreacting as to where the car seat goes in the car, on the right or the left. But at the same time, it's just a manifestation of so much more going on, being overwhelmed, maybe not delegating tasks appropriately between myself and my husband, things like that, which I think you also touched upon, where I think a lot of the times the primary caregiver starts to feel very resentful of feeling like they take the bulk of the responsibility. So they have all that extra responsibility, and maybe even jealousy that their spouse can just take care of themselves and can just pay attention to their own well-being and their own selves. And that resentment seems so understandable. And I imagine that you also teach parents how to communicate their challenges and even maybe identify what they are, because I think that parents may have a hard time identifying what those new challenges are of having a baby.
100%. Communication is a big part of the work that I do. Communication is literally everything in life, regardless of which relationship you're referring to, whether it's your romantic relationship, your relationship with your children, your relationship with friends and family, your relationship at work. Communication literally is the difference between completely misinterpreting something and something blowing out of proportion to understanding where somebody's coming from and being able to take it in and process it and come to a mutually beneficial result. So, I get messages from followers all the time on Instagram, and when you read something on a text, you're able to interpret it in different ways, and you can read it negatively or positively. There's this really funny clip that I saw years ago, I think from the show Key and Peele, and one of them is a more laid-back guy, and one of them is a very high-strung guy. And they're having this conversation via text about their plans, and one is saying, like, are we still on for tonight? And the other one's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And the high strung was like, what? Sure, whatever. Like, he's thinking that his friend doesn't care about his time, or completely blew off that they scheduled to have this get together. And he's like, okay, do you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, whatever you want. And he's like, whatever I want, so you don't care. And, it's really funny seeing this exchange where just because they're two different personalities, when they read the text, they're reading them with completely different expressions and different stressors and things like that. And it ultimately comes to where they meet in a bar, and the one who's high strung is so annoyed by this interaction that he comes with like a bat with pins sticking out of it because he's ready to beat his friend up because he's so mad. And his friend's like, oh, you remembered my costume for Halloween is blah, 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 and you bought me a prop. That was so thoughtful of you. And, he realized that he had gotten, too angry and that things had escalated a bit much. So that happens in smaller pieces in relationships very often. So back to, things over text message, I will get questions from people often. And I could read it in a judgmental way, like them asking, why are you doing this? Or why are you saying this? As in like, you shouldn't be, or it's not, whatever. Or it's coming from genuine curiosity. And one way that this came up recently, somebody asked me, how come you always, out of curiosity, how come you always put a picture of yourself when you're answering questions? So I was like thinking about it, and my first thought's like, I don't always do that, and is there something wrong with that? And I'm like, I said, what, let me respond to her as if she purely is coming from a place of curiosity. And so I responded, I don't always show my face when I'm answering questions. I don't always put a picture, but if I haven't done a talking story in a while, then I will put a picture of my face so that people can remember there's a person behind this account and there's a person who's answering them, as opposed to it just being a blank screen with text and it seeming like very impersonal. And she's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I could have assumed that she was making, a judgmental remark, but it was genuinely coming from a place of curiosity. And we know what they say about assumptions, that it makes an ass out of you and me. So we do that all the time in our relationships, where we assume that our partner should know something, or knew something, or thought something, or meant something a certain way, or didn't do something on purpose, where sometimes maybe we're right, but many times we're wrong. And I get this reminder often in other relationships where people that I don't see as often. And so sometimes you don't communicate as often with people who you aren't seeing. And somebody who I'm really close to and usually see all the time, I didn't see them for a bit of time because we were traveling, and then there was something that happened and it just got misconstrued. And so we didn't talk. But then the first time we saw each other in person, I was, first a little bit quiet, which is not my usual self, and wasn't being myself. And then finally I was like, hey, I can't take this anymore. Let's go into a room and talk. And we talked it out, and we saw where each person was coming from. And the last interaction that we had, how we had both had completely different experiences of something that happened, and we were both in our heads thinking different things. And it's funny how that happens all the time with people, because you literally do not know what is going on inside the mind and emotions of another person and how they're thinking and feeling about something. Any romantic comedy you watch, you want to just shake the characters and say, oh my God, just be honest with him or her, because like they're thinking the same thing about you. They just want the same thing as you, but neither one of you wants to be vulnerable and put it out there. And that's a key word, vulnerability. A lot of times we don't put our feelings out there, and we don't ask, and we don't try to clarify what's going on, because doing that makes ourselves vulnerable. But if you're talking about your partner here, who's your partner in life, and this one person that, is the person that you can share the most in the world with, then if you're struggling to be vulnerable with them, that's a separate thing that needs to be addressed. And it's normal to struggle to feel vulnerable, but you have to just do it. And when you see that they respond to you in a positive way and they validate you or reassure you, that will allow you to do it more frequently. If you do make yourself vulnerable and you are gaslighted, or you are, feel like you're, yeah, invalidated, different things like that. There are ways to deal with it. There are ways to work through it. That doesn't mean never be vulnerable. That means work on how to be vulnerable with each other and how to respond and reciprocate to the vulnerability. So that's something that can be worked on. In general, in my work with couples, I operate off of this framework that I've come up with of communication, connection, and intimacy. So communication is that, bare base where it's how you talk to each other, how you communicate with each other, not just with your words, but also with your nonverbals, how you communicate about each other, etc. And once the communication piece is solid, there's that connection piece. And the connection piece is feeling, good about the person. It's, even if you're just friends, that you want to get along, that you want to have some positive connection there where it's not just, oh, we have a child together, or, oh, we live in the same house. So it's that you actually have a relationship there, even if it's not super romantic. That's just like the relationship piece in general, that it's positive. And then once you have the communication and connection piece, that leads into intimacy, which is the romantic part, which is the parts of your relationship that separate your romantic partner from a friend, where you give yourself to them fully in ways that you don't show up for other people, whether that's emotionally, whether that's physically. So addressing that part of the relationship. And so we work through all those three.
And I was going to ask you what the main struggles and challenges you see with couples who are in the recent postpartum period. But leading on to that, now that you mentioned intimacy, sex, I'm sure lots of people are thinking that that is a huge hurdle that can come up after having a baby, even during pregnancy. So I'm going to ask you about that, and I'm going to ask you about what other really common struggles you see among couples in that, immediate period after having a baby and during pregnancy as well.
Yeah. And the Gottmans found that 67% of couples had reduced relationship satisfaction within the first 3 years after having children. So,
wow.
Some people find that once they get past that few year mark, that they're kind of a little bit more in the clear.
That's encouraging.
Unless they have another kid, which puts them back at square one. But as long as you're intentional about it and you know what to watch out for and you know what efforts to put in, then, things can be great. They don't have to be bad. And again, that's 67%, not 100%. So it's the majority. But what do we do when we want to improve things? We look at the 33% that are what he called masters. We look at the 33% that are kind of acing this period. And it's not that those people never had disagreements, and it's not that those people never fought with each other, and it's not that those people didn't have the same stressors coming up in their day-to-day lives with their children. It's that they approached those stressors differently. They communicated during those stressful times differently, and they repaired from those stressful times differently. So it's not about everything needing to be perfect and never getting upset at one another and never having a struggle. It's knowing that everyone has struggles and we can get through it okay, and we can still love each other and respect each other, and that we can repair it after. So that's really a key point to remember, that it's not about never having a negative point. It's about, even when you're in those negative points, you communicate respectfully, and there's certain things that are off limits, and that even if you by mistake, say something really hurtful, really mean, you can still repair it. As long as we're breathing, as long as we're alive, we can always fix things. I was just thinking today how, on your iPhone, when you by mistake delete something or move something to the wrong place, you can shake it and it will give you a prompt if you want to undo the last action. And it would be really nice if in life we could just shake something and get a chance to undo what we did. But that's not how life works. And once we say something or do something, it's out there, but we can always repair it and apologize and show up differently if it's important to us. So back to the physical intimacy and sex, that's definitely a hot topic for moms and dads and partners in the postpartum period, particularly because very often the mom's not feeling so hot because they are adjusting to all the changes in their bodies. They have low libido at times, especially with some women have very low libido if they are breastfeeding. It's not for everyone, but I know of a particular person who, when she breastfeeds, has like almost non-existent libido, and so she gives herself a time limit of how long she will breastfeed for, because it's important to her to do that for her child, but it's not worth it for her at the expense of her relationship for the long term.
Yes. And can I just emphasize that, because I've said it before, that breastfeeding has to take into consideration the whole family picture, and the baby is extremely important, but so are other family members. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I don't know if like she would go to a lactation consultant or a homeopath, whether there's herbs or things you can do to improve it. I don't know. That's up to each person if they want to look into different options and explore and see whether there's something that they can do that is safe for them and the baby, and that helps them to ultimately have their cake and eat it too. But if you can't do that, sometimes we just can't have everything in life, and different people are going to have different struggles. So, you just got to kind of pick and choose what is most important, and remember that it's never worth it to completely sacrifice your relationship just to be perfect as a mother. So if you're going to be okay as a mother and your child is safe, just so that you can be at least okay as a partner, then that's where you need to be. We can't be perfect in every area or in any area. None of us are perfect, but sometimes, we want to operate at 100% of our capacity in one area, but we then can't operate at a, decent capacity in another area. So then we have to evaluate, what are we going to do? So for example, there was an extra training I wanted to take, and then I realized that if I were to pursue that, then something was going to give in my life. Either I wouldn't have enough energy and time for my kids, I wouldn't have enough energy and time for my relationship, or I wouldn't have enough energy and time for my practice and business. And it wasn't worth it for me to sacrifice any of those things for this new training that I wanted to pursue. And so I decided to table it. And I said, you know what? Once I am done having kids, and once my kids are all in school, and so they're at an age where they can be a little bit more self-sufficient, then I will go back and explore if I want to pursue this then. But at this present stage, it wasn't worth it for me to sacrifice any area for this thing.
Yeah, it's the competing priorities.
Yeah.
So it's always juggling and reevaluating those competing priorities. So back to the intimacy.
Back to the intimacy part. Yeah, I was going to say, I just went a little bit off track there. So a lot of moms feel touched out both physically and also mentally or emotionally. So moms feel touched out for many different reasons, and it's ultimately because there's too much sensory input. So whether that sensory input is things they are physically feeling, like their children touching them holding the baby, them cleaning diapers, them wiping spit up and all that, whether it's the emotional stimulation of, is my baby safe? Does my baby feel loved? Or if it's that mental stimulation of, did the baby sleep enough? Did the baby eat enough? Did the baby do this? Did the baby do that? Do I have enough clean clothes? Is the diaper bag fully packed? Do I need to add anything in? All those different things, and that running laundry list that we constantly have in our heads of everything that we need to do really overwhelms us and can burn us out, so that we can't show up for our relationships the way that we want to. So two different things that I often suggest are reassociating touch as something that you can enjoy. So that's going to look different for every person, whether that's, getting a massage, a mani-pedi, a foot rub from your partner, a facial, a back rub, anything that can make you associate touch as something that feels good just for you. And then also working with your partner to delegate and split up the things that you have to take care of, so that you don't feel like the mental load is so much for you. Both of those things can really help. I go a lot more into depth on this topic in my Touched Out to Turned On workshop, and there's usually a sale code for it for $9 so that it can be affordable. And it has a lot of tips. It explains why people feel touched out, where the lack of libido comes from, and really goes into depth. And then it gives a lot of different tips to work through it and different hacks. I know when I've gone through to edit it or sometimes to check something that someone asked me about, I'll pick up on a little point that slipped my mind, and I'm the one who, put it together. So it really does have helpful tips in it that people can benefit from. But I guess if you're not going to go explore that, just the top 2 tips I can give you are to reassociate touch as something that you enjoy and to see how you can relieve the mental load, especially if it's your partner helping you out with that, because that's going to encourage you to want to be intimate with them when you see that they're pitching in to help you out.
Yeah, because, a lot of sex is the mental, emotional piece of it. And that makes so much sense. I used to try to be this perfect mom when I had my first baby. And I thought that if I asked for help of any sort, I came from a very traditionally rolled family where the mother has certain roles and the father has other roles, and they rarely mix together. And I remember feeling so incompetent if I had to ask for help. So I just bottled it all up. And now I'm in a very different place where we're thankfully really good at delegating. And we have a pretty nice egalitarian relationship with my husband, thank God. And it really takes off the load and takes off the burden. So I think when people say, oh, a husband vacuuming is so sexy, I think literally it is. They're taking away some of the burden and some of the load.
Yeah, 100%. So that's a really important thing to address. And then going back to all the little things and resentment, 2 things that, it's really 3 things, but I categorize it in 2 ways. 2 things that really help out with resentment are 1, validation. So when you express to your partner that you're really upset and frustrated about these things that you're feeling resentful about, if they validate you and say, you know what, you're right, or yeah, I have been coming home late, or yeah, I haven't been pitching in so much around here, or yeah, you are doing a lot, just saying those simple things makes you feel seen and heard and makes you feel so much better and really shuts down a lot of those negative feelings. So that's 1. And the second one is appreciation and admiration, and that goes both ways. So expressing appreciation and admiration towards your partner, which then encourages them to do it for you. And when you show them appreciation and admiration, it not only encourages them to show those to you, it encourages them to also do more because they like getting that appreciation and admiration. And so they're going to think, how can I get more of this? Which is, how we motivate people in general. When people gamify different situations, it's how can I get more points? All of our minds work this way. So in your relationship, when, on a subconscious level, when your partner sees, oh, hey, I do something, and then my partner says or does this thing in response, I like that. So let me do more things so I get more of that in response. So that's just an interesting way to view it. And on that note, something that I like to talk about is maternal gatekeeping, which very often is a double-edged sword for us. So maternal gatekeeping is when we try to control how people in our lives do things because we want it done a certain way and we want to make sure it's done the way that we want. Specifically in regards to things that have to do with our homes and our kids. So, this happens with things like how your kids set the table, if you let your kids help. And I remember my sister was visiting my mom's house and her daughter was setting the table for dinner for my mom, and she was putting different utensils in the wrong place or placing it not even, and the perfectionist in me was getting a little frustrated about it. And I said something to my sister and she's like, if I tell her, then she's never going to want to do it. She'll naturally get older and she'll learn to do it better. She's like, if I'm having a big party where a lot of people are coming and it's important to me that everything looks just right, then I'll go and I'll, quietly fix it after. But if it's just the family eating at the meal and there's no one really coming, I'm just, hurting her self-esteem by telling her that she, didn't do it, right? Which, I'm not saying that kids need to get awards for everything and that we can never tell somebody that they did something wrong, but you have to pick and choose. Something small like that, the spoons weren't exactly aligned, isn't necessarily a reason to put them down, because even if it's something small, that's the way they interpret it, as I'm being put down or I'm not doing something well enough. So for that kind of thing, it's not worth it, and she's not going to want to do it again. So same thing with our partners. When we critique the way they're doing something because they're not doing it the way that we want or that we would do it, they're not going to want to do it again. They're going to say, if you want it done like that, then you do it yourself. This obviously doesn't translate into if it's unsafe. Like, then some people say, yeah, but what if my husband is completely oblivious and he's giving the baby full-size grapes and the baby can choke on that? Then you tell them respectfully, hey, I see you're doing this, and it's dangerous for babies to eat full grapes because they're the same size as their throat and can get stuck. So you need to cut them in half this way so that the baby can eat them safely. And educating them in a respectful way is fine if it's something that's unsafe. If it's just something that's a matter of preference, then either do it yourself or let it go. If it's something really, really important to you and you just don't have time to do it, then one time tell them like, hey, so I really appreciate that you help me with this thing all the time because it really takes a load off my hands. But can I just show you how I like it done? Because a little part of me gets annoyed when it's done this way, and I don't want to get annoyed every time. And I really do appreciate that you help me with it. So if you could just try to do it like this to make me a little happier, and I know I'm being crazy right now, or however you want to say it, like bring a little humor into the situation so that they don't feel so criticized. Because naturally when we criticize someone, it makes them feel defensive and it makes them not want to do the thing that we want them to do. So that's not to say that you can't ever give feedback, but it's, choosing carefully when you give feedback and how you give that feedback.
Yeah, and I'd imagine also being prepared for the answer to be no. Like, no, I can't do it the way you're asking me to do it because it's easier for me to do it my way because of all of XYZ reasons.
Exactly.
Right?
And then if they say no and it's still important for you to be done that way, then that's something you have to take back onto your plate if it's that important to you.
Right. Like then you have to look at it as you're not being subjected to someone's apathy or something like that. Like you're choosing right now to take this back as a responsibility because it's more important for you to have it done a certain way. I think that maybe can take away some of the resentment, like when you own that you're deciding to do this actively and not delegating it.
100%.
Sheina, we're coming up to the end of our interview. I firstly wanted to ask you to tell us all about the work that you do. You mentioned giving a workshop. Please just list out all of the things that you do exactly so that if any of our listeners are interested, they can contact you and look you up.
Sure. So they can follow me over on Instagram at Love After Baby, where I share a lot of different tips and, ideas and relatable things so that moms can feel more part of a community and feel less alone in the struggles, and also learn constructive and practical ways to employ these things in their lives. And then on my website, SheinaSchochet.com, there is one-on-one coaching that people can sign up for, depending on if the issue is clinical or not. I also offer virtual therapy, but that's specifically for people located in New York, New Jersey, or Florida, and specifically if it's something related to like anxiety, depression, etc., that kind of thing. Otherwise, I do relationship coaching. And then I do have a couple courses. So I have my Resentment to Reconnection course. I have a 30-day relationship recharge challenge, and I have the Touched Out to Turned On workshop. And there's some little things that are being added, all the time when I do a new training or something new, and I'll pop it up there so they can get that all from my website and my Instagram page.
I love that you're making this accessible to people who may not be able to afford a coaching session, but can afford a workshop that only costs $9, to have these tools as well. So that's really, really amazing. And I want to end off with saying that it's so heartening to hear that even if people are having major struggles after a baby in this new phase of life, I hope that they feel reassured that there's so much out there that they can do to help improve things. And I think it's really helpful for people who have not had a baby yet to know to expect possibly something like this. It doesn't happen for everyone. Like you said, there's a good 33% that are happy and that are fine. But I think it's really, really helpful for people who have not had their first baby yet to be prepared and know this as well, and know that you have Sheina in case you run into any roadblocks.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on, because I do love to share this stuff and help people be more aware and help people learn things. And on my Instagram page, I give a lot of, little tips here and there, and I explain things. And then my courses are more for if people want very comprehensive, step-by-step, very detailed, in-depth information. Then those are, my paid offers. But there's a lot of different tips and information throughout my Instagram posts and stories, etc. So I try to give as much as I can there. And then if people want more intensive, for example, my resentment to reconnection course is usually on a promo as well, which is like $200 cheaper than a therapy session or more, but it's has over 2 hours of video clips explaining different pieces of communication and connection with worksheets and everything. So it really goes in depth if somebody wants to explore more about working on their relationship, but they're not quite ready, or they don't feel like they're at a point where they want to book a session. And again, a lot of my stuff, like the 30-day relationship recharge challenge, is for people who are, very happy, but would enjoy having a new way to spice up the relationship or bring more love into their relationship, or have new ways to connect and show appreciation and different things like that. I guess just to explain that one, for example, it has a relationship tidbit, how that relationship tidbit can apply to your relationship practically. A conversation starter, since a lot of times when we sit down to talk, we only think about the kids, and so it gives different ideas, which on my Instagram page I do share conversation starters that have nothing to do with the kids pretty often, but this one has 30 days where all these things are spelled out consecutively, and it has a self-care tip and a journaling idea. So that's just a more intensive thing that has all of this really laid out day by day for somebody who doesn't want to have to start piecing it together for themselves.
Wow, you are doing such amazing work. I'm sure you've helped so many couples, and that's just so inspiring. I'm so happy that there are people out there like you. Do you have any closing words for us?
I guess closing words are to remember that it's about the small things often. So no one thing is going to make your relationship, and no one thing is going to break your relationship. It's a million little things. So just put an intentional effort day to day, moment by moment, take it step by step, and you can be on your way to a beautiful, loving relationship.
Thanks for tuning into the Happy Birthway podcast. Head over to Your Wedded Academy on Instagram to continue the conversation. You'll find the link in the episode show notes, as well as links to any additional resources, products, and services mentioned here. If you love listening to this show, you can help it grow by sharing it with your friends and rating and reviewing it. To stay in the loop when new episodes are released, make sure to subscribe. Remember that your health needs are unique and require individualized medical advice. The podcast is not a replacement, and some of the information may not be appropriate for your specific circumstances. My mission is to educate you so that you can confidently collaborate with your healthcare team. I believe that a healthy mom and healthy baby are simply not enough. We also need a happy mom with an empowering birth experience.